Me and Mark took quite a extensive winter break over the holidays at the end of the year in 2018, and this is our first recording session after a good month. And there's no better way to start the new year and getting back to the microphones off other than reading some very cool fan feedback that we got, which we don't get too much of.
Oh,
and
cool.
Even the cooler thing about this is, which you'll hear in just a second, and I'll go ahead and read the message here. Hi, guys. From a very cold UK morning, just wanted to say thanks for all your podcasts. Have been listening to them for over 2 years now. Always enjoy your take on classic horror. Looking forward to the release of the new Halloween on Blu-ray. We get it the next month in the UK. One of my favorite episodes was your review of The Fog. Loved the music at the end of it, too. Any chance you could give me a shout-out on the next podcast? Thanks for all your hard work. And that came from Matthew all the way over in the UK. And responded back to him and kind of gave him a little bit of history on the music he was talking about at the end of the Fog episode. And that is a song called Elizabeth Dane by a German horror metal group called The Vision Bleak. Which,
oh, yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah, and if you guys remember the Fog episode, if you make it all the way to the end of that, there's that song. And basically what that song is it's the entire score kind of condensed into a 4-minute song. So it's pretty cool. And then, I sent him some information about the song and said, thanks for the nice words. Yeah, and so he said, yeah, thanks for the link to the Vision Bleak. We'll be giving that a listen this weekend. Looking forward to the upcoming episodes. I gave him a spoiler alert on some of the upcoming episodes we were doing.
Oh, cool.
And then he said, the upcoming episodes, they really are the highlight of my week. So again, thank you, Matthew. It's great to hear from fans, especially when they're from across the pond, as I even kind of jokingly told him, because that's what all of us dumbass Americans say when anybody's from any other country other than here. Like, oh, from across the pond.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matthew, for listening. That's really cool that you reached out and responded to us. So we really appreciate you listening. That's awesome. I'll have to go back and revisit that Fog episode. I'd like to hear what we talked about. But, yeah, that's one of my favorite movies for sure. One of my favorite John Carpenter movies by far. I watch that every year. It's one of my go-to films. There's also some new some art coming out too for The Fog. I just saw it recently. I think on bloodydisgusting.com. There's some artist that's putting out some new prints. I know he had one for The Fog, one for They Live, and one for another Carpenter film, not Halloween. Another one that we don't talk about very much.
Right. And so if you guys, feel free, Matthew just messaged us on Facebook, so that's one way. If you don't follow us currently on Facebook, just look us up on Facebook. I think you can find us on Facebook just by searching for Horror Heads or Horror Heads Podcast, either one. That'll get you to us. On Instagram at Horror Heads. It's not really necessarily that's my personal Instagram page, but that's what it's called.
Yeah, now that the new year is here, it's 2019, and we got a whole list of films out there that we're going to be reviewing in the coming months. So, and who knows, there may be a certain special Canadian horror movie that we've been talking about since the conception of this podcast that just might make it into the list this year. But who knows?
Dude, we already did Curtains, man. We did that on the second episode.
Oh, that's right. No, I'm thinking Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. But don't hold your breath. That one, I know that one we've been promising for a while, but we may eventually get to it.
Maybe.
I actually have that on VHS, too, so if we did do it, I'd probably hook up my VCR and just go old school.
Oh, cool. There you go. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, might as well.
And speaking of VHS, this episode we are talking about a movie that I watched on VHS just last night for the umpteenth thousandth time, and none other than 1984's Night of the Comet.
And for some bizarre reason, you've been mentioning this movie for a while now, and I remember you said that was like your go-to movie, or it was like every time it's on, no matter what, you always watch it, even though you've seen it a million times. All of this time that you've been bringing it up and like in saying something about it, I've always thought you were talking about Night of the Creeps.
Yeah, that's not this movie at all.
Oh man.
And you're exactly right. And I was it's funny you mentioned it like that because, yeah, me and a friend of mine were talking just the other day about what's the song or songs that when they come on, even if they come on as you're pulling into your own driveway, do you have to sit there and listen to the song in its entirety every time? And Night of the Comet is, for whatever reason, that movie for me. I know a lot of people, they have like The Godfather or Empire Strikes Back or Goodfellas or, even like Halloween or one of the Friday the 13th movies or whatever, whenever they happen to come across it on any odd channel, even if it's network television, they're like, oh, cool, I got to watch this. Night of the Comet's one of those movies, because we have, we cut the cable here years ago, and so we just have over-the-air antenna, and we have a bunch of these weird oddball stations that play, older movies all the time, and we have a channel that actually, I think, it used to be called Comet anyway. I'm not sure if it's still called Comet. It plays like older, like 80s, like sci-fi horror type movies, and Night of the Comet's on there. It seems like once a month anyway, and sure enough, if I flip it on, I'm like, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing for a while. The other thing, I was just thinking about this last night when I was watching Night of the Comet. This is one of those movies almost in the same realm of like Star Wars or like E.T. that, I am of a certain age, and this movie came out in 1984. I'm sure I didn't see it exactly in 1984. I probably saw it in 1985 or 1986 when it was on cable television back in the day. But this is one of those movies, almost like, like I said, E.T. or, even some of the Star Wars movies, or even as far as like Wizard of Oz or Charlie Brown, The Great Pumpkin, Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This is one of those movies that, for some odd reason, I just remember it always being in my life.
The craziest thing about that statement that you just made is I don't remember this movie ever being in my life.
I know.
Until about a week ago.
Yeah.
And I guess like in the back of my head, I thought like I knew it. And then when I watched it, I'm like, I have never seen this before. This is completely new territory for me. Because, none of it rung a bell. And I was like completely like, just like, oh, this is a whole brand new movie. I've never seen this before. I'm very retro in terms of entertainment. I still love the 80s music. I still to me, like the 90s is like modern music, and I have to always remind myself that was like 30 years ago. I'm still kind of back there, like, yeah, that was the time, the movies and music and entertainment, it all was just kind of like that's even like the things I watch now somehow connect back to that time, which is kind of weird, but
it's kind of funny because when I was watching this movie, there's a certain segment of this movie that takes place in Bloomingdale's, or no, not Bloomingdale's. Sorry, that's we were just talking about before we started recording. Moscow on the Hudson. That takes place in Bloomingdale's. This takes place in just like a shopping center type of like a big box store kind of thing, like a Kohl's almost kind of. I don't know if they ever said the name of the store, but it was kind of funny. Kind of reminded me of when I was watching it yesterday. I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, this reminds me a little bit of Chopping Mall.
Yes,
which we didn't care for at all when we reviewed that one, but this movie I love, and so I was like, which we've talked about this before with other movies of this era, and thinking about Chopping Mall, I was like, man, I wonder if this is one of those movies that would have been part of my childhood. Maybe I would have been one of the people that are like, oh, Chopping Mall, I love that movie, I have to have that. Whereas now, when I see like people selling Chopping Mall VHS tapes, I'm like, ugh. I wouldn't even give you 50 cents for that.
Yeah, it's funny because like watching this one, like, it's kind of weird because watching this movie, having no history to it, and it being definitely a period piece because it has 1984 written all over it, from the music to the cinematography to the acting, everything. It was like I had no nostalgia to this film at all, no connection to it, other than like the time period. So kind of, what it reminded me of actually was the other movie you recommended a few months back, Summer School.
Oh yeah.
It had that. It was that same kind of thing, the same kind of feel. Like all of a sudden, I'm watching this film and I'm like, "Huh, yeah, this is pretty cool. I've never seen this." And this, it seems like a movie I should have seen like a million times, but somehow it escaped me. It had that same kind of feel to it. But it's weird about this one is I don't really consider this thing a horror film. This is more like more. I don't know, how would you describe it, but like I know like IMDb calls it a fantasy film, I believe. But like to me, it was, I don't know, kind of like science fiction, maybe. Yeah, I would go more like sci-fi, or I don't know. It's hard to say. What would you consider this a horror film?
Other than the very few like zombie-esque type creatures that are in it.
Oh yeah, very few.
Right. Yeah, I would say it's more of a science fiction movie, and like you had said too, I've seen this listed as a fantasy movie. I've actually seen this listed as a like comedy.
That makes sense.
I don't know if there was much comedy in it, but like you had said, this is, if you've never seen Night of the Comet and you are a fan of mid-'80s stuff, and I'm not going to say horror, I'm not going to say comedy, I'm not going to say drama, nothing, just mid-'80s stuff, watch this movie, because this movie will remind you of Nightmare on Elm Street. It will remind you of, like we had said before, Chopping Mall. It will remind you of Mannequin. It will remind you of all of that stuff. There's one scene in this movie in particular that is just completely sort of out of place, which maybe goes into the whole comedy realm of it. So the two sisters are in this big box store and they're getting clothes and stuff, and then there's like this musical montage where they're like dancing in the aisles, and you're like, what? Everybody's dead, and you're just like dancing along to this song and like doing this like, dance routine. But it's not out of place in this movie. It's when you're watching this, you're not really like, oh, that's weird. But when you think about it outside of watching the movie, you're like, well, that's kind of goofy.
This movie actually reminded me of Dawn of the Dead too. I forgot that it had kind of that sort of feel to it as well. The original Dawn of the Dead.
So we'll just go ahead and we'll do a quick synopsis of the story, because it's really simple story. If you've never seen this movie before, like we always say, hit the pause button, go watch it, and then come back. But basically what this is mid-'80s, and it's this little town. I don't know if they really even ever really said where the town is at or what time of year it is at or anything. I know there's a reference to Christmas at some point in the movie, but I don't think that was actually a Christmas reference. I just think it was like, oh, this is like another Christmas present kind of a thing. The movie opens up with this like monologue about there's this thing coming towards Earth, and the last time that this happened, all of the dinosaurs disappeared. And then you come down to Earth, and people are preparing for comet viewings. you figure out pretty quickly that there's going to be a comet that is going to be passing by, and a comet passes by. It turns everybody to dust that watched the comet, or if you were just briefly exposed to the comet, it kind of turned you into this zombie type figure. But if you somehow were in a steel structure of some sort, you were completely fine. And basically what this movie is you have these two sisters that were in different situations, and they were in steel structures. They survived, and they are basically just surviving the aftermath of the night of the comet.
Well, yeah, it kind of, it's funny because this movie reminded me of, like I said, Dawn of the Dead, because of the weird zombie characters and sort of the way those scenes were shot in the streets, and like, I don't know how that whole aspect of it. Also, it also had a Stranger Things vibe. Obviously, Stranger Things came way later, so they probably pulled from it, but it reminded me of that kind of, like the whole government agency and the, that kind of thing connected me to the Stranger Things sort of.
Could you imagine like somebody watching this now, like some teenager, like, oh, you assholes ripping off Stranger Things, you unoriginal hacks.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was funny because it was, and the story's kind of, it's a little floppy, or not floppy. That's not the word. Clunky. It kind of, like you said, like the whole comet thing, and then they wake up, and then everybody's gone, and then they're like riding around the empty streets, and the sky is like a reddish color, and it doesn't, it's a really weird story. Like it doesn't like really go in the direction you would think it would, or it doesn't really.
Right.
It just kind of rolls along, And it's almost like one of those films where, like, while I'm watching it, it's like not something that you watch because it's this really good story or really well put together script. It's more because it's just got this. I think it's more the atmosphere and the feel of the film that is enjoyable than the actual story itself, if that makes sense.
I have seen this probably as much, if not more, than any other movie. And
oh wow,
I'm. It's not it is definitely a favorite of mine, but when anybody ever asks, like, oh, what's your favorite movies? This isn't one of those movies that comes up as, like, necessarily being one of my favorites, even though it probably is, if that makes sense. It's just one of those, it's kind of like we had said earlier in the episode, it's almost like if it's on, I'm going to watch it, but it's also, too, one of those kind of, like, go-to movies. Because this is a movie to where you can show people that are like, oh, hey, here's like an introduction, even though it's, like you said, it's really not a horror movie. It's not scary.
Right.
My wife can watch this movie and be completely fine, even though she doesn't enjoy it because she thinks it's stupid. But it goes back to what we've said before. I actually think they over-explain stuff at the very beginning of this movie when they talk about, like, oh, this happened before and it wiped out all the dinosaurs. I almost feel like it would be even a little bit better if they would leave that part of it out. Or if you were showing somebody that's never seen it before, you just kind of like fast forward past that part.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then you have zero explanation at all of what's going on, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, all these people are like all... they're out partying in the street and like, oh, hey, yeah, there's a comet. And then, scratching at their skin and then they're gone. There's never any explanation at all. Like you said, you have these government people that are like, oh, we know what's going on and we're trying to get all these people together to do research and stuff. But there's no, like, explanation at all as to what's going on. It's, they kind of sort of explain what the government people are doing. But the movie just kind of like ends, really. It's like
it does.
Yeah. And maybe that bugs some people, but personally, myself, I'm completely fine with it. I think it's great. It kind of just sort of happens and it ends, and you're like, oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, there's no huge explanation of what's going to happen. You just kind of go along with it, and you're like, okay, so that's how they're going to end it. That's fine, I guess.
Yeah, left it for, it was one of those endings that they totally could have done a sequel to it, I suppose.
Oh yeah, totally, absolutely.
And, this goes into the realm of some of the other movies we've talked about on here in previous episodes, to where I don't know if this movie was necessarily overly successful when it first came out. Supposedly it grossed like almost $15 million off of a $700,000 budget. So to me, that seems like was
That's pretty nice.
Overly successful. But it's also one of these movies that, like Halloween 3 and, countless other movies that have just gained this weird cult following.
Oh man, that's so weird you say that. I could totally see like a double feature of, grabbing some Bud Light and kicking back and with some popcorn and watching Halloween 3 and Night of the Comet back to back. That would be an awesome night right there.
That kind of makes me want to do it.
That would be perfect. Yeah, kind of that same feel. Like even like Halloween 3 is just sort of weird and like, it doesn't really make sense. And then this one's kind of like that too, where it's just sort of, it's a movie for itself, I guess. And, it's not like, I'm not going to say this is like a great movie or like a classic film where it's like this, wow, it's like one of the best films ever made and, praising the director and all that. I wouldn't do that. But I will definitely say this is an incredibly enjoyable film. And I think it's more the tone and the feel that you get when you're watching it than the film, than the story itself. But I do have to say the thing that stood out the most for me in this movie, which is kind of a weird thing, but I noticed it. I had no idea, it really surprised me. Let me put it that way. They play the song "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," the Cyndi Lauper tune,
right?
But I'm listening to it. I'm like, there's something off here about that song. I'm like, that's not Cyndi Lauper singing it. And I'm like, listen to it again. I'm like, it sounds like somebody who sounds kind of like Cyndi Lauper, but it's not Cyndi Lauper. I'm like, that's weird. Why would there be somebody else singing the song that's not Cyndi Lauper? And sure enough, I went on to the soundtrack website or whatever and looked into it. And it is a different artist performing that song, which like really surprised me. And I guess that shows you just how many times I heard that song, like in the background or whatever, in the MTV days, that I knew it was not Cyndi Lauper. I could tell there was something about the way she phrased a few words and the tone of her voice that's not Cyndi Lauper.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, I picked up on that years and years and years ago. But I think why that happens is because you'll hear that not necessarily just in horror movies, but you'll hear that every once in a while in movies in general. Is I would assume that "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" was not written by Cyndi Lauper.
Right.
So it was probably easier to get the rights to re-record the song.
Right.
And probably cheaper. And then have somebody else come in and do a different version of it rather than to license the Cyndi Lauper version of it.
So bizarre how that works like that.
Yeah, it's Hollywood, man. Hollywood.
That's business, right?
And, the record business.
Yeah, very bizarre.
Unlike what we do, we just look shit up on YouTube and...
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that too, because just a few years ago, there was a big controversy because Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy Osbourne's wife, she did kind of the same thing where his old catalog of albums, of the Ozzy Osbourne albums, I guess she runs and manages his business, and she went out back, and it really pissed off Jake E. Lee, who is the guitar player on Bark at the Moon and The Ultimate Sin. And she went back and they took him, or Well, no, I'm sorry. It didn't. It wasn't him. It wasn't him. They kept his stuff. Never mind. Let me rephrase that. Forget that. But Sharon Osbourne, basically, from what I understand, for the first early Ozzy Osbourne albums, took off the, I think it was the original bass player and the original drummer's tracks, and then just had somebody else put new ones on and then re-released them, so they don't have to pay the royalties to the original musicians, which was pretty bogus when you think about it. But because those albums keep selling and selling and selling, because there's so many Ozzy fans, but she was able to basically just say, well, no, we'll take these guys off and have like a different guy, like a studio musician, come in that will just pay him a flat fee to do that, and then we'll release the albums again, like remastered or whatever. But we don't have to pay royalties because those guys aren't playing anymore on it.
That's insane.
But yeah, I think, and I might be not completely right on who. I believe it was the bass player and the drummer. Or it wasn't the guitar player. It definitely wasn't Randy Rhoads, and Jake Ely. It wasn't Jake Ely as well, because there's no way they could mimic those guitar, because that was they're unique. So it's not those guys. It was the background rhythm section, the bass and drums that were replaced.
So just as Mark reiterated there, 2019, we're still not going to do any research on anything that we proclaim on this show.
Well, Journey too. Journey did it too, didn't they? They took off Steve Perry, all of his vocals, and they're having the new guys sing all the songs and re-releasing the music like that now, so that they.
Is that true? I don't even know.
Yeah, they don't have to pay Steve Perry anymore or they can,
Maybe that's why he's out there releasing new music now. Which
yeah.
So this is going on a weird musical rant here, but
the Night of the Comet and Journey.
The Steve Perry album that came out last year is pretty good if you're like a Steve Perry fan. It has that sort of weird like old Journey feel to it, but it almost like brings, because Steve Perry's like, man, was he like 60 years old now or something?
Definitely up there.
But he's almost like turns him into like a crooner, because for whatever reason, music is like one of the few things that I have like no prejudice against at all. Other media forms, movies and TV shows and comedy and all that stuff, I'm like super, super, super picky. People seem to think that I'm super picky about music, but I have stuff from rap to country to classical all in my music collection. Yeah, his album that came out last year was called Traces.
Huh.
So
okay. Yeah. Wonder how well it did.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, I heard about it just out of one of those weird things where somebody was like, oh, hey, so Steve Perry just released a new record and he still sounds great. Really? He hasn't done anything in like 20 years. That's weird. And checked it out. I was like, oh, you know what? It's not too bad.
Oh, and speaking of the Ozzy thing, I've got this to say about that. Yeah, I was right. It was Ozzy re-recorded the drums and bass on his first two solo albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, after a royalty dispute. Blah, blah, blah. After Ozzy Osbourne was fired from Black Sabbath in '79, he got his own band together, which included Randy Rhoads on guitar, obviously, bassist Bob Daisley, and drummer Lee Kerslave. This band recorded and released the two albums Blizzard of Oz, which came out in '80, and Diary of a Madman in '81, which are his two big classics. And they were unexpectedly fired by Sharon Osbourne, and bassist Rudy Sarzo and drummer Tommy Aldridge are credited in the liner notes and pictured on the inner sleeve, but it was Daisy and Kerslaker performed all bass and drums parts in the original thing. And it gets worse, blah, blah, blah. Subsequently, in 2002, reissue of the albums were made with Daisley and Kerslake's original bass and drum parts removed and re-recorded. So the new parts were re-recorded by Osbourne's drummers at the time, Mike Borden from Faith No More and Robert Trujillo, who is now currently in Metallica, or Trujillo, or however you pronounce his name.
Oh, yeah.
So anyhow,
what's that? Yeah, so, it's like Hawaiian, isn't he?
But yeah, so there's actually a sticker on it that says, including completely re-recorded bass and drum performances. So on the remastered albums in 2011, or no, wait, I don't know. Anyhow, yeah. So there you go.
So what do you think that dude does? The guy from Metallica, like the guy with the big, because I'm assuming it's the guy with the big long black dreads, braids. Plays bass for Metallica. What do you think he does when Metallica's performing live and they are doing a song from Injustice for All where there's no bass at all?
Yeah, I know. That's pretty interesting. I wonder what he does. He probably kicks back and has a beer.
I guess it's time for a smoke.
I wonder what the other guy did. What's his name? Jason Newsted did during that time.
I don't.
Back in the day.
I don't remember. I saw Metallica a couple times, and
maybe they just played and they just turned them down when they were playing live.
just pretend like you're hitting the strings, man. Nobody cares.
So.
Oh man. All right. So we're gonna review this one.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a big fat thumbs up.
Oh!
Even though I'm not like it's not like a class. No, it is a classic film. It's not like one of my favorite films of all time. It's definitely one of those. It's not in my collection yet, but I think I need to put it there as a go-to film. It's like one of those. You know what? I got some beer in the fridge. I got some popcorn in the cabinet. I'm going to watch a movie. Well, why not? Night of the Comet. Here, I got that on Blu-ray, so I'm going to toss that on.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I am going to just double that review completely. So I give this 2 giant thumbs up. And, you can't go wrong with this movie at all. This is I almost want to say it's a feel-good movie, even though it's not. But, I mean, this is a movie that if you want to kind of show off to people and be like, hey, yeah, I'm a horror fan, let's watch something. Throw this one on. It's, it's not going to scare anybody.
No.
So, give this one a watch for sure.
Yeah, it's a must-see. So put it in and tell us what you think. If you get a chance, come check us out on Facebook. And I guess we have an Instagram now, so check that out too.